questions?
Yes, I have questions. Is that the question?
I have answers. It may not be the right answer, but
Perfect. So generally, I want to get sort of a big picture since we're sort of more than halfway through the ACC. Is it still the case with extra games in the ACC? Above 500 ACC, 20 wins overall, you expect to go to the NCAA tournament? Is that still pretty much the expectation? No? Okay. So what do you think you need to get to in order to make the NCAAs?
need to get our RPI in the top 40.
So how many of these final 8 games do you need to win, do you think? You know, and then how many, I mean, have you even...
I don't think of it in those terms.
Okay.
I think in terms of, we gotta win the next game,
Okay.
and that's it. Then after that game, you gotta win the next game. And you prepare one game at a time and try to put your team in a position. Like right now, we've had some unusual things happen. Like Jaquan Newton will not be at practice today. He got his front tooth knocked out yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he's having, I don't know if it's called oral surgery, but he's having his root canal. And then Ivan Cruz-Ucita hurt his elbow. He doesn't remember when it happened, just started hurting, and it's hurting today, so we don't know about his status. And then Omar didn't play last night because he had strained his Achilles tendon and couldn't really push off of that ankle. So he didn't play. So don't know how many guys we'll have available come Wednesday.
Yeah, what do you see in Wake Forest? I mean, they've struggled, right? Can you talk
I
about
don't
that?
think so.
Okay.
The difference between winning and losing is very small. So the tendency is to think the team is struggling if they're losing those games,
Right.
where in fact, they might be really improving. Like, one thing we know about Wake Forest is they're number one in our league in tempo. All right, well, if I asked you the question, who's number one in tempo, you're gonna guess Duke, Carolina, Louisville, and it's Wake Forest. They play with a great deal of speed and quickness and open court. They try to create open court opportunities for themselves. They're also number one in getting fouled. They get to the foul line an awful lot. Well, why do they do that? Well, when they play in the open court, a guy like Cody Miller-McIntyre, who in my opinion is the best layup maker in the ACC and has to be one of the best in the country. He's 6'3", he weighs 200 pounds, he's the point guard who just goes to the hoop, and he's best when he's in the open court. But he's also a very good passer. He has almost 100 assists. So he's not just scoring layups, he's getting in the paint and kicking it out for shots, making his teammates better. And that makes a good point guard. They have Devin Thomas, who's perhaps behind Okafor, maybe the most crafty low post player in the conference. He's not the biggest, he's not the most athletic, but his athletic ability happens to be his quickness around the basket, his great hand-eye coordination, his ability to score near the basket, but if he's on the perimeter, drive to the basket and get near the basket and score. So he's a very tough matchup for us. So is Cody Miller-McIntyre.
Coach, we spoke to Shane Larkin this morning at a shoot-around and just talk about how cool was it to see him last night. He said this was his first time back in Miami since leaving the U.
Well, it's his first time back to watch a game. He's been back several times just to be in town. He ran his own camp in town here. But it's the first time he's had a chance to watch a game, and we were very happy to have him here. It was Shane Larkin bobblehead night. I'll be going to the Miami Heat game to watch him tonight. So it's nice when a former player comes back, especially someone with such notoriety. someone who had such great success during his 2 years here at the U.
On Tanya, you talked before the season about, I guess, I know there's setting goals wouldn't be the right word, but there were things that you wanted him to develop. How do you see him meeting those expectations?
Well, I think, I'll say the three things at the defensive end of the floor, he's done really, really well. He's defensive rebounded. He has stayed out of foul trouble for the most part. And he's a terrific helper to his teammates. He knows how to play team defense. He's ready to play team defense. His individual defense has improved, but I think it can get significantly better. He's working on that. But his offense has still been very limited to things that he's comfortable in doing. I'm trying to get him to do things that are a little more challenging, and we work on them every day. And Eric Conkle works with him every single day on it.
Can you have more, is it easier, I don't want to say easier to do, but is it easier to do that, say with a big guy at the back of the basket, than say out on a guy, say teaching a point guard? Point guard seems so instinctive to me. And I don't, there's
Well,
probably.
there is some truth to what you're saying, that normally guards have played the game a long time and big guys are still growing. So as your body changes, you get taller, you get stronger, you're constantly making adjustments. Tanya's still not growing physically. He's done growing height-wise, I believe. I think he's going to get much bigger. He weighs, I think, around 240 now, 245, in that range. I think he's easily going to be able to handle 260 at some point. But he's going to have to really lift weights at a higher level, really get his legs much stronger. But he's headed in the right direction. It's just taking a little longer than I want.
What was your reaction? I don't know if someone asked you, sorry, but what was your reaction when you saw him make that dunk? Drive?
Oh, that was terrific. Partially because he planned it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something he just did at the moment. He recognized how they were playing something, read the defense correctly, and then finished with authority. That should give him plenty of confidence. It's some of the things we've worked on, of getting him to go from the high post to the basket on a what we call a one dribble drive. It's actually called a rip. On that rip move, you got one dribble and you got to explode because you're ripping by the opponent. Just like you rip a piece of paper, it needs to be done quickly. And he did that last night. And he does it in practice once in a while. But if you looked at the bench's reaction, you saw his teammates were kind of surprised that he did it and very, very happy that he did it. And they exploded off the bench, which was great.
Have you ever had a player like him where you've really taken someone from a very raw position to,
Yeah,
did they reach the point you wanted them to?
yeah, they played 14 years in the NBA.
Okay, that's pretty good. Who was it?
Olden Polonese.
Oh, okay. I covered him with the Pistons briefly. So does he remind you of him in a way, or?
No.
No.
Olden Polonese improved faster than any player I've ever worked with. Faster. Olden Polonese was considered by his teammates the 11th player on an 11-man roster his freshman year. Olden came into my office about 2 weeks into school his freshman year with tears in his eyes saying, "Coach, they won't choose me in." We only had 11 guys and one of them was a walk-on, and they chose the walk-on ahead of Olden. I called the two captains up to my office to ask them what was going on, and they told me that Olden was the worst recruit in ACC history. He couldn't run, he couldn't jump, he couldn't catch the ball. couldn't dribble the ball, couldn't shoot the ball. He was awful. And I told him, I think you're wrong. Back then, practice started October 15th, and after 2 weeks of practice, Coach Holland wanted to send him home. And he said he wasn't even competing. So I was given the responsibility of taking him individually before and after practice and working with him to develop a game. And I enlisted the help of Dr. Bob Rotella, a sports psychologist. And between the individual work that I was doing with him and the psychology that Bob was instilling in him, Olin Polynice went from being the worst guy on the team to being a good sub, then a good starter, then our go-to guy in the low post, and then led us to the Final Four in his freshman year. That's pretty quick improvement. Mm-hmm. And in the Final Four, he matched up and played Hakeem Olajuwon to a standstill, and we lost in overtime. Olden left after his junior year and played 14 years in the NBA.
Had you recruited him?
Yeah. I was told by the Syracuse coaches, Brendan Malone, who's been in the NBA forever,
Those are the Pistons too.
Brendan Malone asked me why we would sign him in the ACC. He said he can't play at that level. We played Syracuse in the Sweet 16, and Olden dominated the game. And after the game, Brendan Malone, who was the assistant coach for Jim Boeheim, said to me, I can't believe that's the same guy. I don't know what you guys did to him, but that guy has gone from being a stiff to a stud.
Does Tanya know anything about Olin Polynice?
Have you told him that story?
I've shared a lot of stories, and I'm sure I've told him some of the stuff with Olin Polynice. I've told all the team about Olden. But Olden was very much a student of basketball and wanted to understand the game. So when I started working with him, it was only on one thing. Teaching, like anything else, you know, when you want to teach a youngster something, you start in small bits. So if you want to teach them the alphabet, which has 26 letters, teach them ABC, then A, B, C, D, E, and eventually 10 letters, then 20 letters, and 26 letters. And then they sing it. They learn it all different ways, and that's what we did with Olden. We started with the jump hook. I started with Tanya with the jump hook. He still doesn't shoot it. Yet everybody we play against has a jump hook. Everybody. No, every guy he faces has that weapon. I would like for him to develop that.
What did you see in Olden?
What did I see in Olden?
When you recruited him?
Honestly, his high school coach, John Carey, was my point guard in high school. And he told me this kid's going to be a really good college player and maybe an NBA player. He said he has no offensive skill right now, but he's smart. He knows how to play the game with other guys, but you're going to have to teach him how to score. And in that freshman year, when he first got started, he was not in good shape, so he didn't run. He never had great hands, so like even in the NBA, you only could throw him certain kinds of passes. And one of the things I told Angel Rodriguez when he was trying to throw lobs and no-look passes to Tanya, I said, you know, I told him the Olden Polynice story. I said, I told the players, only throw it to him when he's in the low post, has the guy on his back, and you throw it up to him so he can see the ball for about 2 or 3 seconds. Then he has a chance to catch it. But if you throw him a fast pass, it hits his hands and bounces off. He's not catching the ball. They said, well, then he's no good. And I said, no. Nobody is good at everything. There's certain things he's no good at, but if you throw him the ball correctly, the way we're asking you to, the coaches are telling you to, he'll be very effective. When the players adjusted and started throwing the ball to him correctly, and he had developed the jump hook. Seth Greenberg was the, I don't know what they called him back then, but like a part-time assistant or something, the restricted earnings coach. Seth was on the staff, and we had a conversation many times throughout that year about the fastest improvement he's ever seen in a player.
When you see somebody like that, does that change the way you kind of look at players when you're recruiting, give you more patience, you look deeper in them or anything like this?
We always look for the guys who are more complete. Olden had a lot of work to do. But when you get a recommendation from someone who you respect, like Coach Carey at All Hallows High School, when Coach Carey tells me, hey, you need to recruit this kid, he's gonna be really good, he sees him every day. He knows what kind of kid he is, what kind of worker he is, what kind of IQ he has, and you gotta trust those guys, and I trusted him. I also trusted him when I got to Bowling Green. He sent me 2 great players.
Have you been asked about your next 2 opponents, and what challenges they each pose in particular, since we won't.
Wake Forest, you missed that?
Oh, okay, I'll get it from somebody.
Well, you just can listen, and I think this thing is
Okay.
being videoed.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Michelle, you
Yeah.
want me